Today we are going to talk about racism and dealing with it as a nurse working in the healthcare profession. These last couple of months has just been tough on us as a nation. We're still dealing with COVID. At the same time, we're dealing and addressing an injustice, towards the African American community, and it is just intense. By now, you already know, if you haven't already, been up to date with the George Floyd case and with the murder that occurred that day. I'm not going to insert a video. You can go watch it. The video in itself was just so heartbreaking. It was just tremendously burdensome. One, as a believer, Jesus is love, God is love. At the same time, you don't have love for one particular race. Was good. And then at the same time, as a black woman who will one day, God willing, marry a black man, produce black offsprings, black males, and I know one day I will have to have this conversation with my sons or my son about how, no son, you can't just go frolic and go around just acting any type of way. You have to comport yourself a certain type of way, so that way every time I say my goodbyes, I love you, it hopefully will not be the last time I'll be telling you that. Every time I hug you won't be the last time, and it concerns me as a professional, as a healthcare professional, seeing the way that not only the officers but the EMS conducted themselves. I don't know if you guys have taken care of an end-of-life patient who has a DNR or hospice or done any of that, and you literally held their hand as they are passing. You can feel as their body goes from pumping with blood to lifeless, from full, tight, rigid to limp. And you can't tell me, as those officers were laying and applying pressure, that they could not feel his body go limp. I'm not okay with it, not at all. And then not only that, dealing with, healthcare professionals and seeing other people who should know better hit me with that all lives matter. And I've had this conversation with a lot of my colleagues when they hit me with this all life matters. And for me, I'm like, having to explain to them why it is not okay to murder another individual. Yeah, they want to focus on the looting and the riots, but I'm like, you are being distracted from the root cause, which is the injustice of the African American population, of the black individuals, and when I encounter people who are like, all life matters, I just point blank illustrate this to them. If your father passed away and my father passed away, we're having a funeral for your father, we're taking 2 hours out of our day to mourn, to reminisce on your father, then I come in talking about my father, hey yo, my dad died, what about me, what about him, what about his death? How inconsiderate and insensitive is that? In that same matter, that's what you're doing when you're saying all lives matter in this moment that we are taking time as a nation to actively take a look and focus on the injustice of African Americans. Yes, I'm 100% with you, all lives do matter, but right now, let's just bring attention, let's focus on the black lives that constantly are berated, are taken, like life is being taken unfairly. Let's focus on that for a moment. And it's like in times like this, you really and truly see the hearts of people. You see the hearts of your colleagues who you thought had your back. Who thought were ride or dies. And you're like, wow, so this is how you really feel about African Americans. And I'm an African American, so this is really how you feel about me. And why does it matter in the healthcare system? Because as nurses, the most trusted profession, it's like, there are racist nurses. Racism still exists in the healthcare sector. It does not magically dissipate. It magically does not go away just because you walk into the healthcare, you walk into the hospital. No, the same racist individual puts on scrubs and goes about taking care of patients, and to me that is very concerning. I've had physicians walk up to me and ask me, hey, when you're done, as a CNA, can you just go ahead and get the nurse? And I have to tell them, I'm the nurse. I've had individuals come talk to me sideways, talk mess about nurses, talk mess about black nurses, and I'm like, hey yo, I'm right here, what's good? I've literally had to deal with nurses mistreating patients due to their skin color. Oh, you know, she's always calling for payment. Do you know those type of people? I'm like, those type of people, what? I go in there, African American, no history of drugs, no history of, you know, any signs of, you know, seeking pain medication. Turns out the lady had a tumor and she was in pain. So excuse me, why aren't we giving pain medication? Why aren't we addressing the issue? But it just seems like it's 2020 and it looked like we had made steps of improvement, but no, not at all. And especially in this industry, there is a racial disparity. There is a disparity among African Americans, among the treatment that we get and we receive, and the treatment and the access to care that is available. You take COVID that just happened, right? Okay, we look at the number of cases and then we look at the number of deaths in African Americans. And why is that? Well, African Americans already don't have the access to care. So how can they get treated for COVID when they don't have access to care to their regular illnesses, diabetes, hypertension? They can't just, you know, go to the hospital near as them. They have to catch 3 buses, walk, you know, a couple of miles to get to where they need to go just for their follow-up appointments. You know, another example, the amount of deaths from mothers, African American mothers having children, the maternal mortality rate is just incredibly high for African Americans. And why is that? So there's a lot of disparity in healthcare, and it really gets me really upset as a nurse and a soon-to-be physician. And I could sit here and I could list all the reasons why, you know, such injustice exists, not only in the streets, but now moving on to our hospital. But that's really, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to make any sort of change. So if you're watching and you're like, yo, Chi, how can I help? How can we change? How can we shift the way we're treated, the way we treat others? Well, you know what? Let's talk about it. For all my people who are not melanated, you're not African Americans, and this necessarily doesn't directly impact you, well, this is what you can do to help. 1, you can educate yourself. Educate yourself on the treatment of African Americans, on our history. 2, you can educate your co-workers. You can educate your kin. You can educate your family members to let them know, like, yo, these common stereotypes, these misconceptions you have about African Americans, they're wrong. Like, no, they're just as educated as us. You know, they're smart as us. You know, you can stop the lies that are being pushed in your sphere of influence. And I think most importantly, you can educate your children, because children are taught. Children emulate and they copy what they see. So if you're, you know, teaching racism to your children, then they're going to keep passing it on and passing it on and passing it on. So I think it's important, if you are not melanated, educate those around you and educate yourself. That will help against, you know, help fight against this racist ideology that is still forever going around. As an African American, or as an African, and I say African because I myself, I'm African. I was born in Africa and I came over here to America. And a lot of times I hear my Africans saying, oh, you know, this doesn't really pertain to me. You know, me, I'm Nigerian, you know, I'm Ghanaian. And it's like, but it does, because when you walk in the streets, they don't see, oh, there's that African, let's treat him a little bit better. No, when they see you, you're black. There goes that African American, and you're going to be subjected to the same treatment. So it does matter to me. It should matter to you, because after all, aren't you going to raise your kids in this land? Do you want them to be subject to the unfair treatment? You know, so as African Americans and Africans, it is so important that number one, you educate yourself. Educate yourself on your rights, so that when you get pulled over by the cops, you know how to act, you know what your rights are, and what they can or can't do to you. That is super important. You can educate yourself. And you know, we shout and we want change, but change really truly takes place in the legislative department. Change takes place with laws and rules and regulations, but how can those changes be made when we're not properly represented at those tables? We're not properly represented in the legal system. Like, how can we expect change to occur? So one of the things that is big key to me is get educated. Become a physician, become a respiratory therapist, become, you know, a lawyer, hold these higher seats, so that way our voices can be heard. And as a whole, together, whatever the case may be, what you can do to help is to, one, donate or to give to causes that help African Americans. And I will list the link below where you can go to support these causes, support these efforts in the description box below. Another thing you can do is shop in Black-owned businesses. Super important. You can help generate revenue and income and help put back money into our Black communities by giving and shopping and supporting. That is such a huge way that you can impact and make a change. And if you don't have money to donate, you don't have money to give, what you can do, it's free of charge, costs you $0.00, is to speak up. When you notice an injustice being done, when you notice any sort of bullying, any sort of racial bigotry, you can speak up and you can stand out. See what has happened because we decided as a community to stand up, in allies with other communities to stand up. It is so important. Speak up when you notice all of these injustices being done. Imagine what would have happened if those other officers called that officer who stood on George Floyd's neck into order. Like, imagine, just imagine. I don't know, it's just, I just pray and I just hope that these changes that have occurred are not just a one-time deal, are not just a yay, you know, we got justice for one individual, but I hope that it is a catalyst, you know, it is a stepping stone into forever change. And I hope that not only myself will be a part of the change, that you yourself will be part of a change. You don't have to donate. You don't have to do 1, 2, 3. Just know your lane and how you can make a difference and go out and do it. Together we can all make a change, and that's what's important.